I want to bring you a little information about karmic contracts and how that applies to your mental health. So, what is a spiritual or a sacred contract? It is basically an energetic agreement that you might have to learn something or to teach something in your lifetime. Now, I'm going to expand on that a little bit because contracts can happen with people to people. In other words, souls to soul. It can happen as part of teaching in a career. So maybe you have a contract as part of becoming a certain something. Like for me, I really think I was contracted to become a psychologist in this lifetime so that I could provide information from a different perspective. I've done this work in many, many lifetimes. But I think in this lifetime, I probably contracted to become a psychologist to teach you from a mental health side how it is that the soul works. It could be with a family. It could be whatever agreement that you've made with your family members, again, unknowingly, before you came here. And when I say unknowingly, your soul knew what it was doing, but your human side of you, until that becomes illuminated for you, you may not know that that's the lesson that you're here to teach. It could be with a place that you're supposed to live. It could be with really anything that's going on in your environment. You can have a contract with your own self that you're going to go through certain things, that you're going to experience certain things. You could have a contract with your health. You could have a contract with your mental health. You could have a contract with, again, the people in your lives or the type of dynamics that you provide, the environment, your career. All of these different things could be a form of a contract. Now, when I talk about contract, I always talk about lessons. There's something that is supposed to be played out when there is a contract involved. So this is not like human to human sitting down and signing some sort of contract, but it is soul to soul or soul to experience, whatever the experience might be, that you have chosen that you are going to play a particular role or have people in your life play particular roles for you so that you can learn and evolve in the way that you are supposed to get to, again, where you're supposed to in this lifetime, but also to get to your highest good. So contracts are always there to create the situations for you to evolve to your highest good. Now, these contracts can be very sticky, they can be very challenging, and yet the thing to think about is that that might be the method in which you were supposed to evolve is through these kinds of contracts. So let me give you some examples now that I've kind of talked through the what is a contract. So I'm looking at my list of the what, the who, the when, the why, the how. These are the questions that are kind of the golden rules of journalism in asking these questions. So I'm going to talk about who. You can have contracts with your parents. So your parents might have a contract to bring you into this planet, even if you don't get along. It could be that your parents have contracted you to bring you into the planet because they are supposed to hold space for you in a particular way as you grow and learn. Or it could be the opposite. The contract could be between you and your parents because you're the one that's supposed to teach your parents. It could be that you have a contract with a boss. So in other words, you have come in contact with someone that you didn't know up to age maybe 30, 35, whatever, but that they're there to force you to grow through whatever discomfort that it is that they're creating for you. You can also have a wonderful contract. So in other words, you could have a contract with someone that, again, you might have had a terrible childhood, you didn't have father figure or a mother figure, but then you run into someone later in life and you actually feel very connected with them and they are there to support you. It could be that you have a contract with that soul to provide something, sorry about that, provide something that you didn't get earlier in life. So it is one of those things we can have contracts with anybody. We could have sibling contracts that one sibling is there to kind of stir things up so that you can learn what you're supposed to learn. In my case, I've had those in my life. I've had sibling contracts. I've had parental contracts. I've had ex-spouse contracts. I've had all these different contracts, but this is how you know that they are there for your higher good because anytime you have a tricky or a sticky situation with someone or something, it's always some sort of contract or life lesson for you that it's going to take you to that next level. When do these show up? So they show up at the exact time you need them to in order for you to initiate that next chapter of growth for you. So for some people, it's starting with parents. So all the way from day one on this planet, you may have had the relationship that is built on that contract. So it could be in day one, but it can start at any juncture in your life that is there to initiate change and growth in any way whatsoever, depending on what that contract is and what it is there for in order for you to grow and learn and evolve and whatever that might mean. It can show up in the strangest times, the strangest places, or it could be that you even have a feeling like, wow, okay, I really need to learn something. And then boom, you have some sort of person or situation come up that you are supposed to learn from. So contracts can show up at any time of life. You could be 89 years old and still have a contract that shows up just then for you to learn and grow or for you to be challenged even in any way that is possible. Why? Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about the why. Contracts are always there as part of our growth. These contracts that we have with individuals, it could be part of a soul group, could be part of a soul family. And when I say soul group, what I mean is it doesn't necessarily mean that family members are going to be the part of your soul group because your soul group may or may not have people that are there to teach you. The difference between a soul group and soul family is that soul family are people that you resonate with right off the bat. You have no drama with them. There's no difficulties really within soul family kinds of relationships, no significant difficulties. We might have spats or this or that. Excuse me. But for the most part, soul family are the souls that we resonate with in such a way that we really have kind of that smooth, energetic connection. We might learn from them, but it's not in a way that we might from someone who we have a contract with. So go back to soul group for a second. Soul groups, boy, you almost always have contracts with the souls that are in your soul group because the soul groups are the individuals that show up in your life to teach you and to be in a place where it nudges you toward growth, whether comfortably or uncomfortably. So again, it's an interesting thing how the contracts and the soul groups and soul to soul relations and karmic energy and all this come together. But it's this whole kind of weaving of concepts for you to understand why is it that these contracts may show up. How do they show up? So they can show up in very subtle ways, or they can show up in big bang kinds of ways. So I've had a number of clients who have come to me that they have very challenging relationships with their bosses, and they're like, why is this happening? Well, in many cases, it's because they need someone to teach them how to assert themselves, or how to say no, or how to create their own boundaries in some ways, or basically maybe a person is dealing with self-esteem or self-worth issues, and this boss of theirs pushes their buttons all the time. Well, so the contract right there is that this soul that is not family related shows up, and it's like a training ground, shows up so you can go learn this kind of behavior or these patterns or learn what self-worth really is because you couldn't learn it somewhere else. You couldn't learn it in a family. You couldn't, for whatever reason. It was not what you had an opportunity to learn prior. So I can't tell you the number of people that have come to me with bosses. I can't tell you the number of people that have come to me with challenging parent relationships or sibling relationships. And so sometimes it's friend relationships, certainly. And those again are there to help us learn and grow and evolve. But it's not unusual that it can just go boom. Okay, where did this person come from? Why is this happening to me? Very unexpected. Or it can be those contracts are woven throughout what I call your tapestry of life, and you learn little lessons along the way. So, in other words, that's something I did not cover is you can have someone who you have a contract with that is supposed to be there throughout your life to kind of nudge you along and create those challenges for you. Or you can have those big experiences that happen all in maybe a couple months or a couple years. Now, I'm also going to say the flip side of this. We can have contracts for very positive reasons as well. So when we talk about karmic contracts, it's not always something that's challenging and terrible, and we wish this was over. It can be one of those contracts of support. Like I said, it could be that someone shows up and supports you in a way that you've never been supported before because you didn't have that in your family, and they followed you through the rest of your lives together in a way that felt very, again, nourishing and supportive and sustainable. It could be that a parent, you do have a contract with a parent. Maybe you are set to have a lot of challenges, and yet you needed a particularly nurturing kind of parent to be able to get through those challenges and support you along the way. So it can be a positive, it could be a negative experience, it could be lots of different permutations and combinations of how these contracts can come about. But the key is that about it is that there is an energetic aspect to it. There's something there that is, it's a bond, it's a connection, but it's also that you know that there's something there that's pushing you to learn and grow in some way. And you wouldn't be able to learn and grow without that particular soul or situation or group of people or location. It could be a lot of things. You wouldn't have the opportunity to grow without that. So that's the other part to think about is would you have grown without these sticky relationships? Would you have thrived in the way that you had you not gone through what you had gone through? And so it's this beautiful, I call it beautifully ugly, but this beautiful part of our human condition that if we could embrace these situations where we feel so energetically charged by them, we'd probably get through them in a much easier and much better way. But it's keeping your mind open to the idea that, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be learning from this. I'm supposed to be evolving beyond this. I am going to go back and talk a little bit about relationships in general. So, a number of people have come to me with upsetting kinds of romantic relationships, whether it's a partnership, whether it's a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, whether it is a spousal relationship where they're actually married. And they've gotten through a lot of different challenges with that person, and they kind of feel done, but they feel guilty for leaving or for changing the situation. And what I have to tell people is in many of those cases, those contracts are complete, and it is now up to them for them to decide if they continue on in that kind of relationship. Because there are times when we complete that contract just by learning whatever it is we're supposed to learn. And sometimes it opens up space for a whole different kind of relationship with that same kind of soul. And sometimes it breaks it down to the point where you realize you're done. And that's where you know that these contracts are all about learning and evolving and helping you understand yourself in a much better way, is that either it's going to open something up into a new future or it's going to shut something down because you're done. And that's when you know those contracts are complete. And that is a hard one because a lot of people, like I said, will get to this point where they're like, wow, I'm just done. I don't have anything more for that person. I've been there. I understand that. And it doesn't just happen with spousal or romantic kinds of relationships. This can happen with siblings. This can happen with parents. This can happen with friends. If you just get to this point where you've gone through whatever you're supposed to go through and you aren't meeting in the middle, you're not seeing eye to eye, you're not experiencing life in a way that is aligned with one another anymore, sometimes you have to be done. Divorces, there are people that have been married and divorced several times. Well, they've probably been divorced at the point that they were done with that particular kind of contract. People who are in tumultuous relationships, same thing. It's like if they're learning what they're supposed to learn and then they feel like they can't learn anything more from that other soul, probably means they're done. In one case, several years ago, a woman came back to me as a therapy client. And this was probably the second or third time she had come back to me. We did a fair bit of work several years before, took a pause, did a little bit of work together again, took a pause. Then she came back with some marital issues. And on the very first session, I asked her, are you still learning from him? Were you still learning about yourself through him? And she shook her head, smiling. She says, yes, damn it. And I said, well, then you're not done. But at some point, when it comes to that point where you're like, wow, I've just done it, can't do this anymore. That's when that contractual kind of piece is complete. That doesn't mean you don't grieve. That doesn't mean you don't experience the stressors or the discomfort of the human condition. It just means the contract is complete. I've had that again. I can't tell you the number of people. I had someone several years ago, say, gosh, I've been in this empty marriage for forever and I don't know what to do with it. And we started talking and, they basically had no relationship other than roommates. And so we talked about this whole contractual thing. Years ago, she and her husband had finished the actual contract, but they were just kind of coexisting because that's what they thought they should do. I have another person, I had another person I worked with a couple years ago who had this very difficult relationship. He wasn't very communicative at all. He was openly supportive, meaning that he was going to let her do whatever she wanted, but she just wasn't happy within the household. And so I got a message from her after we stopped working together saying, "Hey, I'm in a great place. I separated from my husband. We decided it's okay to live separate." And so their contract was complete from an energetic perspective, but basically they stayed married just for the sake of financial and logistical kinds of reasons. So as long as the contract is complete and as long as you can get to that point, you're going to know that it is pretty much done. Now, one thing I will say is that I'm going to bring in emotions to this, being a psychologist. Again, like I said, just because a contract is complete doesn't mean you're not going to grieve and not going to go through some of that. But you may have heard me talk about my magnet metaphor before, that basically there has to be a way for souls to come together and be drawn together. So whether it's a physical attraction, sexual attraction, emotional attraction, whatever it might be, there has to be something that brings you together. And because it's like that bond, that energetic bond, it's like the taffy like strings, the energetic strings that are tying you together. And so sometimes in those relationships, you have one or more of those magnets that just starts to flip, and you're like, okay, mentally, oh, I need to get this back together. I need to fix this. I need to work on this. But all the while, that flipping back and forth of that magnet is part of the learning, part of the evolutionary process in being discerning toward, is this a person or soul that I want to have any kind of relationship, whether again it's a partner, a friendship, a parent, whatever. If that magnet gets to the point where you're like repelled the other direction, you're almost done with that. You might have to tidy up some loose ends, some financial kinds of things, or whatever it might be. But if that magnet flips, you're done. And the other part of that is you can get to the point where you have very little emotion left for that person. Doesn't mean you're mean to that person, doesn't mean you don't like that person. It just could mean that you're done. Energetically, you don't have much left for them. And so that is another part of working through a contract that you might have with someone, is the contract might be active even though you're not with that person anymore. The contract part of that is that basically you still have some of that emotional work to do so that you can get where you need to be to completely be done, make closure, and also make sure that you're not going to repeat the pattern in the future with someone else and also in a future lifetime. So it really is about cleaning the slate. It's about being done. It's about feeling like, yeah, I'm pretty complete with this. That doesn't also mean that you're ever going to want to go hang out with that person again. So it could go lots of different directions. It just depends on the person and what the dynamics are. But I've had lots of clients come to me that get divorced and are trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be at family functions together for my children? And then over time, it works out. I've had clients tell me later that they never thought that they'd be friends with their spouses, but it was because their contract was complete from the romantic side, but it was not necessarily complete from the friendship side. So they could hang out together, they could be cordial or congenial toward each other. It's just the energetic piece of this. So, for those of you who understand karma, for those of you who understand these sticky kinds of relationships or are trying to understand these sticky relationships, it's just another way for you to start thinking a little bit deeper as far as the soul evolution part of you. Wow, why is it that I'm having this experience? Why is it that this person or people or situation or job or whatever it might be is getting under my skin? So I hope that helps you understand contracts a little bit more. I'm likely to put out a webinar in the future about this just to help you understand this a little bit more, especially from a clinical perspective. As a therapist and psychologist, I so wish I understood or was taught this information back in graduate school, because it really helps you convey to a client what's going on, but it also helps you understand it from the therapy perspective so that you know how to guide them through. So keep an eye out for webinars and information, and you can go to my website at www.drkatherinet.Kelly.com. Also, you can look on my website. They're not listed there yet, but I have several webinars that are in the works. One for creating sacred space for therapists, if you are a practitioner or coach. If another one is aromatherapy for practitioners and coaches. I've got all these different webinars that I'm going to be putting out there for people to understand this information more and weave it into what you already know. Would love to hear questions, would love to hear your thoughts or comments. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope this helped you in some way understand what an actual karmic contract is.